Hello everybody and welcome to Alternative Interactions. I'm Gary. Well, today we've got something a little bit different. I'm in the car. I've got a bit of time between jobs, and so I just thought I'd do a fairly quick video to say hi to everyone, and thank you very much for all your shares, likes and the subscribes. Really do appreciate it. But I thought I'd do a quick one on money at the moment. The reason I'm in the car, by the way, it's been raining and I can't have my usual walk around, and it's been torrential this morning. It's just literally stopped raining, so I thought, why not? Why not have a slightly different background from the Merriam for a change? So there we go. Now, briefly look at money. Now, Richard and I did a really interesting show with our Rocking Pandora's box, looking at the golden era and what could be. And I've got for some time that we won't be using money in the future, but obviously we're not there yet, and so we have to have a transitional period, and I believe we're now currently going through that transitional period. So the transitional period is now beginning as we're going off what is fundamentally the Babylonian cursed monetary system into another system. And although it's very, very similar and will look virtually the same as the old system, I do believe it's a very different feel to it. I'm not one for crypto at all, but there is a guy called Reggie Pemberton who came up with the blockchain system for transactions, which allows us to be unmonitored and buy and sell what we want, and use our money as we wish, or credits money. It's going to be money again, as we wish. Now, Reggie Pemberton, although he's got all his patents out there and accepted, has been shut down by the system, and so until he and his system of monetary transactional use comes into being, I'm very skeptical about the rest, because the deep state has basically used his technology, stolen it, stopped him from doing what he truly needed to do, which was give us freedom of our spending without Big Brother. And they've used that system as a CBDC type system where they're going to try and enslave us. Well, I don't think it is going to actually happen now. But as always, the deep state always wants to try and do something extra to stop us doing what we should be. So yeah, that's my thoughts initially. So if anyone asks, "Oh, what about crypto and stuff like that?" I've never looked into it because I have no interest in looking into it, because crypto is currently a derivative of the US dollar, which is a derivative of nothing. Remember, the US, we used to have a sterling silver standard, and for hundreds of years the British pound sterling was based on silver, and that was the central currency of the world fundamentally for many years. And I think in 1940, through the BRICS-Stratton Agreement, America took over the world reserve currency by pegging itself to gold. And so what we get here is America then becomes the currency of the world, backed by gold. And I think it was 71, might have been 70, but 71 rings a bell from terrible sometimes with dates. But in 71, Nixon took America off the gold standard. And so the central fiat currency of the world that everything is based upon was then backed by nothing but fresh air again. And essentially, the USA defaulted on their agreement. And that's the US government, obviously acting under orders from the money people. I mean, Nixon didn't do that by himself. He was definitely, as part of his, what he was told to do. But we have a default, and so that makes America unreliable and untrustworthy. Now, there was a further Bretton Woods agreement in '74 where the Americans, via a deal with Saudi Arabia, linked the dollar to the petrodollar, or oil. And obviously America said that we'll protect Saudi Arabia militarily, and there'll be no harm come to them. And if you don't sign the deal, probably there was going to be harm come to them. Let's be fair about this. And so the petrodollar system came up, which was really quite toxic for everybody, and allowed the Americans to manipulate the money how they saw fit, and allow certain people and certain countries to make lots and lots of money, none of which was beneficial to us, the people at the bottom of the pyramid. So we currently have that agreement finished in 2024. So last year, that agreement finished, and Saudi Arabia did not renew it. So currently, what we have is the American dollar backed by absolutely nothing. And all currencies around the world are derivatives of the dollar. So what that actually really means, to understand it, it means that the money that we call money is not money. It's a promissory note to pay the bearer on demand absolutely nothing, because it's not backed by anything. Years ago, if you had a £20 note, you could go into a bank, or certainly the central bank, Bank of England, say for instance, in the UK, and present your £20 and ask for £20 in gold, and they would give you £20 worth of gold. And back in the day, there it probably would have been about an ounce of gold, or just under. So say the gold standard was set at £34. If you had £34, you could go to the bank and they would give you a full sovereign ounce coin of the realm, which was gold, and your money was backed by gold, and your money was as good as gold. And there was derivatives as well from this in the silver, where the ratio would have been around 15-1. So you could have gone into the bank and for your £20 note got 15 silver coins potentially. So it's that kind of system where your paper money had a direct link into gold and silver. Now, gold and silver are really the only true money in this world. Everything else is a derivative of. So the American dollar, when they took off the American standard, as in they became the gold standard and the central or world's currency, they were backed by gold, and each dollar had a representation to a certain amount of gold. And the reason why they came off that was because the central bankers, or the elite banking mafia that we currently have and have had for a very long time, couldn't make enough money. So they broke the system so that they could make more money. And by breaking the system, we're now where we are now. So what we have is paper money that's worth nothing, and gold that's going up through the roof. And I truly do believe, from everything I've watched and seen, that silver will do the same. Silver's been suppressed like you would not believe, manipulated, and it has been for over 150 years, in fact. But we currently have the major big banks in the world who are short in silver. And what short in silver means is that they're claiming that they have X amount of silver in physical assets when they don't. But what they've actually done is sold paper derivatives of, a bit like a promissory note, a bit like our money, our pretend money is now. And so what they've done is they've for each ounce of silver, they've fundamentally sold it probably around 700 to 800 times. And with gold, they've sold each ounce of gold that they hold around 200 times. Well, that's great, because back in the day, nobody stood for delivery. Nobody wanted their physical assets in their hand because they trusted the system, because the money was as good as gold. But now what we find is the dollar is backed by nothing apart from fresh air. And the money or the bonds or promissory notes on silver and gold, which are directly linked to silver and gold, are not linked in any way, shape or form that's relevant, as in gold being 200 times over resold and silver 600, 700, 800 times. So to maintain the facade of the money, silver has been manipulated down, because if silver went to its true value, all the big banks, I mean JP Morgan, HSBC, Citibank, and there's many others, would be left holding huge debts that people went, oh, I think I'll cash in. And they may want to cash in rather than take the physical silver, but they'd still want their money, or their perception of their money, back. And the banks would be in multiple billions in losses. And that would create a run on the banks, and the banks would then go and finish and collapse. So you can see why the gold and silver have been manipulated. Now, the gold is currently still manipulated, but not to the degree it was. And we're seeing the gold go up in value. Now, something that may not be apparent is that gold is actually not gone up in value at all. Gold is still the same value as it always was, even going back hundreds of years. I think in Roman times, for a gold coin, you could buy a very good quality toga and some very nice sandals. Well, today, if you went into a top suit maker's and you wanted a very nice pair of shoes, for around 2,000, sort of 700, so we'll work on dollars because I know what the value is at the moment on dollars, but for around $3,200 for a gold coin, you could get yourself a very nice suit, shirt, tie, the full works, and a very nice pair of shoes. So fundamentally, what you could buy with your gold coin in Roman times, you can still buy with your gold coin today. But the money that's associated with the gold has been reprinted and reprinted and created and created and created against it. So what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that the money, our perception of money, the paper money, has been reprinted and printed and printed and printed to create extra debt in the system, which allows the system to keep growing and making money. But it doesn't actually make anything, because as they print money, they devalue the value of that money. And so what we're actually seeing, and what we have seen with the gold price, is that, for instance, I think it was in the 1920s, a $20 note would buy an ounce of gold. So in the 1920s in America, a $20 note would buy an ounce of gold. Now, today, to buy that same ounce of gold would cost you $3,200, and it could even be $3,300 now. I mean, the prices are really starting to skyrocket, but we'll stick to the $3,200 range for ease. Now, using the analogy of the purchasing of clothing, a toga and sandals, and the suit and shoes today, that gold has not gone up in value. It still has the same intrinsic purchasing power of that kind of good or goods. But it's the amount of money, paper, fresh air money, fiat currency that has been created by the system and the banks that has meant that the US dollar has devalued to the point against gold where gold is worth $3,200 instead of $20. And I'm not going to work out the percentage on that, but it's very high. You know, we're talking about thousands of a percent increase in the value against the money, the US fiat currency, our paper money, to gold. But in real terms, gold hasn't gone up. Only the devaluation of the monetary system that we are experiencing. And this is what creates the big bubble. And at some point, this bubble's got to burst. And we're going to have a reset and a revaluation back down to where we were before. So we're getting very close to that period now. And for me, personally, the one thing that will show this when it really does go will be silver. Because at the point in which silver goes over $35.50 or so, it then means that the big banks have lost control of the dollar and the silver. And the silver will go and go and go. And at that point, the gold will really start to go. I mean, although the gold's gone up hugely in a year, the gold hasn't even started to go up yet because of the devaluation of what it's based against, which is paper money, which is worth nothing. I think the US dollar has lost 99.65 cents in value over the period. So something that would have cost you $1 before, you'd now need $99.63 to purchase that item. That's huge. That's huge. It means the money's worthless. The money that we're given, anyway, is worthless. And it's exactly the same in the UK for the UK pound, the euro, the Australian dollar, the Canadian. Everything has devalued to this point against real money, which is gold and silver. And so we're going to have to go back to a gold and silver system. There is no way around that. The only way that we can get sound money back is that way. So Trump and co are very, very aware of this currently, I believe. And this is where the tariffs come in. Now, to understand the tariff system, we need to understand how the system works. Now, for companies to buy, or companies and countries to buy oil when they went onto the petrodollar, that country or company would have to purchase dollars from America to then purchase the oil to then get it delivered to their country. And so exchange rates in money were very important, as was international trade. Now, these countries obviously were paying a premium on the dollar to what it was really worth. So America was making good money, or the bankers certainly, on the exchange rate were making very good money out of this situation. So the petrodollar was in fact a control mechanism to create more money for the mafioso bankers. So every country that needed to buy oil had to buy dollars first before they could buy the oil. And they would get charged just like you do when you go on holiday. You go to um, an exchange counter and you say, "Oh, how many euros to the pound currently?" And they give you an exchange rate, and you pay that exchange rate. Now, those exchange rates could be manipulated by the bankers to force countries into more and more debt, or to give certain countries a leg up. Very corrupt system, very corrupt. So what happened was these countries imposed tariffs on the United States to get some of their money back off what they were spending. But a tariff is actually a tax on the people and not the people who manufacture it and not the government. So the only people that pay the tariff is actually the purchaser at the end of the chain. That's you and me. So if I produce something that costs £1 and I import it elsewhere and they have a tariff system that makes that then a £2 item, the person purchasing that will pay £2. I will still get my pound for being the seller, but the government who imposed a tariff acts as the middleman and then takes that pound for themselves. So this is a stealth tax that's been put on people and purchases throughout our lives. Another very nasty, sick, twisted system. But countries have put tariffs on the United States to make their manufacturing worthwhile for the money they lose on the exchange rate. But of course, the company never gains, the people never gain. It's only the government and the bankers that gain as the middlemen, the third party parasitic entity on this. So very interesting when you start to really look at it. So what Trump's doing is Trump is putting tariffs on countries. So America had 0 tariffs on all the countries, but they had tariffs on him. I mean, some countries had 97% tariffs on the United States and some 30, 20%. It all is a big mixture. And so Trump has put tariffs on all the other countries. Well, although that will initially make purchasing goods in America far more expensive, what he's actually doing is saying to the manufacturers who moved out of the United States and went abroad to China, Vietnam, wherever, to make their goods at a cheaper rate using the lower valued to the dollar currency of that country and the lower labour costs and obviously fuel costs as well. Power is very expensive, unnecessarily so as well, as you've watched my videos. But what Trump's now doing with the tariffs, it's making their goods very expensive to purchase in the United States. And so for a company to make money, or as in selling the volume of goods they need to, Trump has incentivized these companies to come back into the United States, set back up in business and produce the goods inside the United States, having 0 tariffs then. And what that's actually doing is paving way for the end of the US dollar as we know it, to ensure that when the dollar collapses, and it will, and when the currencies around the world collapse, and they will, that America has got a manufacturing base where it can produce goods within its country without relying on another country that would possibly potentially be not in a position to be producing those goods to the extent where they can export those goods. I hope that makes sense. So the tariffs are merely a tool to get manufacturing back into United States of America. And many big companies are now going back into America in this way, which is absolutely awesome. Brilliant. So yeah, we're it's getting to a very interesting point in time with all of this, because these shenanigan games can only go on so long. And what do I mean by that? Well, China and other countries around the world, but we'll focus on China here. Japan is certainly another one, but we're going to concentrate on China, because obviously you're seeing in the news the trade war and the tariff war and all this kind of nonsense going on. And all that is China's trying to stop manufacturers from leaving China, going back to America, to maintain its manufacturing dominance. And that's what we're seeing, really, basically. But there's also another thing. Now, to purchase these petrodollars when they wanted to buy stuff, instead of handing over cash, what they would often do is they would buy American debt bonds. And these American debt bonds would then be held by that country as a kind of a credit float. And so you wouldn't need to be paying America the exchange rates constantly. You would just buy a load of debt bonds off them, and that would be like your float, as it were, for the exchange of goods. Now, China over the years built up a huge amount of these debt bonds. And remember, the American economy is creating debt all the time because of the printing of, or the creation of, dollars out of fresh air. And so this debt and the uncontrolled spending and corruption in America, and it's no different in America as any other country. The UK is even worse, I can assure you. During the pandemic with the 19 and the C, British politicians were giving £1 billion contracts to the local pub landlord who they knew and used to go drinking with, to ensure that they could both feather their nests very nicely. And this was a very common occurrence. Multi-millions, billions and billions of pounds were created out of fresh air and distributed to the beneficiaries of the political parties, not just the one in power, but many of them. And it was a real old boys club looking after the old boys, and they money laundered billions. Well, it's a very similar principle with the debt bonds. So China, over 30 years or so of manufacturing, have built up a huge amount of American debt bonds, a lot of value in monetary wise, trillions and trillions. And so what happened then was, with a certain war with you and the sanctions placed on R, and the fact that their bonds and their savings money for dealing in oil and goods was frozen by the USA, UK, and Switzerland, that's meant to be impartial to everything, and they're really not. China went, oh. So China has been returning or selling back or using the debt bonds as payment for the goods that they've been purchasing off America. And from 3.5 trillion think they're now down to about 800 billion in American debt bonds. So they have been continuously reducing their exposure to the American bad debt that will collapse at some point. And again, this is another indication that things are changing, because when a country reduces its debt exposure to another country or a system, it obviously means that they can see that the writing's on the wall. And they didn't drop all these at once. They've been doing it over many years, just trickling away. But we now have a situation where the American economy and monetary system is so fragile that if China decided to return their 800 billion in debt bonds and say, we want the money, we want the gold, or we want the value of this in yuan, it would crash the American economy, and it would crash the worldwide economy. It'd also crash their own economy, which is probably why they haven't done it yet. But for all Trump's tough talking and all the wiggling around of the Federal Reserve and all the central banks, fundamentally, the one country that holds the power to crash the economies of the world overnight is China. Japan's in a very, very similar position as well, and Japan has been getting rid of their American debt bonds hugely. And so with this tariff war, it's posturing. They're moving around trying to maintain manufacturing. It's not about the money, and it's not about anything else. It's about that. So we're now seeing the end stages of this posturing, and it could go on for another 6 months or so, a year. I don't think it will. I think by the summertime we're going to have a pinch point, and something's going to happen that will create a situation, and at that point in time there will be a fundamental crash. Now, if silver breaks free from its manipulation before that and starts going up and up and up, silver will take the whole system down anyway, because there's many ways, because the system is so fragile that it can be taken down and destroyed. But this is why Trump has been trying to get the return of all the gold in physical form back to the United States, because he who holds the gold can sit at the table of negotiation when all this goes pop. Now, the other thing that you're not being told is that the biggest holder of gold in the world, and the most powerful country therefore of what would come through from a refinancing and a re-evaluation of the system backed by gold and silver, is China. China probably holds 3, 4, 5 times more gold than America does. And China probably holds more gold than America and Europe put together. And Russia's not far behind. So we can really see the old guard control system crumbling down financially. And whatever we look at in our research, whenever we're looking at stuff in research, generally a very, very good way of doing this, and it's why I've got into money a little bit, was to follow the money. You know, USAID, USAID, Trump stopping that. That was a deep state slush fund coming directly out of America to control countries, politicians, political parties, and the media around the world, being used by the deep state, the mafia, sitting within the belly of America, safe as sound, safe as anything, because no one's going to go after anybody sitting in America, are they? Because the Americans would take it as an attack on themselves when it's not. And so we're seeing a huge, huge shift about to come with the money. And this is a good thing. We are going to have to go back to paper money that is fundamentally backed by gold and silver. But in the meantime, during this transitional period, silver and gold will become unobtainium. You won't be able to get it anymore. So if you have paper that says you own a piece of gold or you own a piece of silver, you don't own anything. You own a share of, and the only thing you'll get paid out in is fiat currency, and that fiat currency is worth nothing as once it detaches from the promissory system which we're currently under. So the only way to, in the short term, during the transitional period, which could take a year or two even, this won't happen overnight. None of this will. It's been 20, 30 years, 40 years in the making for this particular crash. Certainly in 74 when they came off the, or went onto the petrodollar, that was the increasingness of, or the speed up of the money creation and this destruction of the people's money that they presume is real money. So, and obviously none of this, what I've told you, is financial advice or anything like that at all. I'm not qualified to, and I wouldn't ever. But if you hold physical silver and physical gold of the coinage of your country that you live in, when it all goes pear-shaped and this money, the real money, which is gold and silver, goes through the roof, in your hand you will hold that money and they can't take it off you, and you will be in the position to be able to purchase whatever you want and whatever you need. Fundamentally, it'll probably be food as much as anything at that point. But there will be periods of time where probably, and this is in historical, as happened historically, in Germany, in Weimar, when their currency collapsed. And trust me, we're well on the way. The USA and the world is well on its way to that exact kind of thing. When they got hyperinflation, you could purchase a house for 35 silver coins, and you could purchase a good sized, nice house for 75 silver coins. Or some gold. A couple of ounces of gold, say. Can you imagine buying a house for $6,200? That's a real nice big house. But in times of stress, when people need money and the only real money is gold and silver, what else do they have to sell? And that sounds terrible, but what you're doing is gaining an asset and you're putting your gold and silver back into the system, allowing them to purchase food or whatever they need to then continue and start bringing the system back up again. So this transitional stage is really needed. It's not a bad thing, but make sure you're prepared for it, because we're going to lose power, we're going to lose internet, we're going to lose all sorts of things, but it's fine. It's how it needs to be. A transition from one thing to another is very, very rarely smooth and without its difficulties, but it's an opportunity to grow. And from this transitional stage, we'll go to gold-backed money. And as we develop and grow higher vibrationally, that we are, we'll get to the stage where we don't need money at all. And at that point, we really are in Shangri-La. So with that, I shall leave that there. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll catch up with you guys again soon. Please like, share and subscribe if you like my channel and what I'm saying. I had been promising to do this video for a long time, and had put it off, but I think